I don't know if it's the case for you all and if you have the similar experience, but comparatively speaking, for my generation and when I was growing up, when I was raised, celebrities had this sheen on them, this prestige, this mystique, and they were put up on that pedestal. And as I've become a young adult and just flat out a full grown adult, that sheen has faded away, and celebrities do seem to be just in the bad graces of society in general. It's almost now in many circles, in many areas, seen as just kind of lame or mockable, mock worthy if you really are a big fan of certain celebrities. And I think a big component of that is the celebrities themselves. Well, for one thing, there's the expansion of the media, and a part of that is that through engaging with social media, the celebrities themselves have taken the mystique away from them. For many celebrities, you know what they're doing, you know where they're eating, you know what products they are clearly sponsored by, or things along those lines, with a little bit less covering, a little bit less shade thrown to maybe keep you off the scent or keep you less aware of how inundated they are with corporate sponsorship and things along those lines. And I think that is something that the majority of people, at least in America, seem to find less and less appealing as time goes on. My point in saying all of this, we've been talking about the NBA ratings and how they've been a struggle this year. And I think if you look at it, we have more access to NBA stars and celebrities than we ever did in the past. And to have more access, this goes for any person. If you have more and more availability, that can be assigned to some that you have either less and less respect for your own time, or that you just really, really desperate for attention. I think there are cases where that's the case for celebrities. In this broad example, I think there are also cases where they just really enjoy the feedback. They do enjoy that attention, and they feel like it's good fan service to be that available. But in any case, I think it's pretty much fact. If you look around, that celebrities just aren't quite as cool or influential as they have been. There's also the fact that with media changing, YouTube celebrities are a big thing now. That's that's kind of a new mode, and they're probably some of the most engaged celebrities with their fans, but that's considered to be a cool thing because of the medium there and the method of accessing them. But with those new avenues and new media, there's also more territory for celebrity, more of our platforms, I guess, to be a celebrity, and therefore each individual celebrity is covering less territory. And with the way society has changed, things are also a lot more polarizing. We'll talk about the example of that in the NBA, but I just find it fascinating, and I do think this ties in with NBA ratings coming down. And if you think of approval rating of celebrities, compare these eras to kind of prove my point about bandwidth. And how ever present was Michael Jordan in the 90s? He was everywhere. He was everywhere. He was also very, very quiet outside of the game of basketball. Not a lot was known about him relative to, especially comparing to LeBron James. I mean, the modern face of the NBA, who is still on the NBA, like front and center in NBA marketing materials, in spite of decreased performance and not having contended for a championship in quite some time. But let's look at a timeline just to compare these eras of NBA celebrity. If you look at the 80s, of course, when I say 1980s, there were a lot of great star NBA players as the league became televised and went through its golden age. But the two that come to mind, of course, would be Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. There's a component there of East versus West. There was the component of them being rivals in college, not liking each other, etc., being very different personality wise. And in that, they both were very respected. They both beat each other on the greatest stage, heated rivalry, respected rivals. And also, I think there was something for everyone to find, whether you were more of a Magic Johnson guy, more of a Larry Bird guy. It was very appealing. And of course, obviously, in the 90s, this pre social media era. So, not as much access to these players. In the 90s, the golden age kind of makes Michael Jordan blossom out of it. He's developed in the golden age and then really makes his imprint through the 90s, as you well know. MJ was universally beloved by those that wanted him to fail against their team or otherwise. They still had that fear and respect of him. He kept a mystery about himself in spite of being in many promotions, being pushed very, very hard as the NBA grew to a more and more global entity. There was still a mystery about him. There was space between him, and you can see that exemplified in the Last Dance documentary. He also was not political. In addition to being before the era of social media, he was not political. He had this attitude of, I want everyone to buy my shoes. He had that famous line of Republicans buy sneakers too, or conservatives buy sneakers too, whatever the line was. Wanted just to kind of be successful. I think for Nike, not really ruffle feathers with activism and things like that, which also was less common during that time frame from celebrities. So there wasn't as much polarization against him. If you look at the 2000s, my mind immediately goes to the two great dynasties of that time. The last three-peat ever, the Lakers, Kobe and Shaq were there. Shaq was a big star. Kobe, if you look at him, I mean, he was kind of trying to emulate Michael Jordan much of the time. And Tim Duncan was, as you well know, a total recluse in some ways, at least concerning media access and things along those lines. And it was also still in the 2000s, kind of pre social media really blowing up at that time. Even when it did, I think if you analyze social media and how Kobe Bryant was doing it, there's separation there. There's clearly like Kobe's not the one getting on Twitter at the time, rest in peace, Kobe. But I don't think he was managing his own social media. He had people doing that for him. Whereas you look in the ends, obviously, player empowerment became a big focus. Even before then, there were things in place, but of course, the decision with LeBron James, and it becomes kind of the forefront of a lot of the conversation and the development of the league and the players' status in the league. That also came with players are going to be sharing their thoughts more, doing things to express themselves outside of basketball, outside of their craft a lot more. And with that, this all happening in the social media era, there's more access to these players. And some of the things I think that I mentioned earlier with celebrities in general have now and have been hitting NBA players for a while. There are many people, I would say it's fair to say, that just want LeBron James to retire. And that may be a horrible attitude and sentiment, but I think people feel that way more so than any other of the face of the league stars that we've seen before then. I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't around to watch Kareem. I know he was pretty polarizing because he was an activist, but I don't think people were like, gosh, Kareem, just get out of here. Maybe certain media members that he spat with were that way, but I think overall there wasn't that perception. And maybe some of this is that we just see it more because I also have access to see these things on social media, but it is just a very different perception and interest there. I think a bigger group of critics in the general populace than there have been in the past. And it's more based on, or at least partially more based on, I guess would be a better way to say it, of knowing more about the person and their views and the activism that they choose to participate in inherently becomes polarizing if I think the majority of NBA fans are on board with activism that players decide to partake in, and many are very supportive of it. And I think you get a deeper brand connection by the player engaging in that activism when it lines up with the fan sensibilities. But there's another side of the coin to that, that if it doesn't line up with your sensibilities, your values, what you believe, etc., then there is a distance being created there, and maybe a sense just we both don't have the shared values together, and gosh, maybe we're not all in this together as I thought that we were, by both loving and enjoying the sport of basketball. There are positives and negatives about a lot of those things, but I wanted to give some thoughts and ask your thoughts in terms of celebrity status in the NBA, because the NBA was built in the golden age by the celebrity of the players, by David Stern putting the names on the jerseys and promoting these smiling faces in the league, and charismatic, likable, lovable personalities. And that's certainly what I grew up with, and a part of why I fell in love with the NBA as well. And it seems like with things evolving the way they have as society at large, just one of the side effects has been that the NBA has been caught with some of the negative consequences of that.